All right, so we are ready to roll on our Khan Academy work with equivalent expressions and absolute value to find distance. Let's share my screen and get going. Now, I think I accidentally drug too many windows down here. I want this back up on my other screen. So guys, I'm going to rank these problems essentially by the order of importance by how many we missed. So the first problem I'm doing, a lot of us missed, right, is what that means. So problems like, oh, by the way, we have to spell equivalent expressions. Equivalent, equi means like same or equal, and then it's V-A-L-E-N-T, equa or equivalent. And today is the 21st. Ah, there we go. My paper did not want me to write 2020. Hey, Natalie and Skylar, if you are having some sort of tech issue or whatever, I need you to send me a chat about what's going on. Otherwise, I should see your cameras turn back on here real soon. All right, so the first expression we have starts with -5, then it says +7, then -3. Hey, Manasvi, it might be a good idea to hang out with us at least on a couple of these things, because I can, like, I was going to try to meet with you at some point, but maybe you just need to go back and do a second attempt. That's totally fine if that's the case. Aside from the people who have sent me messages in chat, who can tell, I'll just take a volunteer for the first thing. Who can tell me what we should be paying attention to here? What should like raise an alarm in our brain of like, oh, we have something to do like immediately? Yeah, Miriam?
Instead of -3, it should be +3.
Yeah, anywhere that we see minus a negative, right? We talked about take away a bad guy. Now, the -5 that starts, I'm also just going to put that in parentheses. We don't have to, but it's helpful just for organization's sake. So Miriam said, turn the minus a negative into plus a positive. And then what I identify, and if you come to AOR extensions to work on this, I identify that we have negative, positive, positive. So the expressions that we're looking at when we look through what Khan Academy gives us as options, I'm not going to show you guys the wrong answers that people selected. Trying to decide where I can really throw this. I guess I can open a really small paint window. Sorry guys, I'm still getting used to how to do all this. So these were the multiple choice options that we were given, right? A, B, C, D here, and E. So you guys can see those, right? Yes, no, not now. Can we see those? Somebody give me yeah, thank you. I know that Zoom grays out some things. So when I'm looking through my options of my multiple choice here, what I'm thinking is which ones give me a -5, a +7, and a +3. Well, A is a pretty easy choice right off the bat because I see my -5, my +7, my +3. It's the other ones like C and D and E that get real confusing. So let's talk about what we see in C. So we're going to talk specifically about option C and test, does that work? So option C starts as -5 minus parentheses 7 minus 3. Does anyone know what fancy word we use for when a value on the outside of a parentheses splits up coming into the parentheses? And this is what a lot of us are messing up. I'm telling you right now, if you don't have a high score on this assignment yet, it's because of this. So everyone pretty much should be paying attention to me. Sorry, I'm sending a quick message. This is called distribute. So I would make a note in your notes that says distribute. And what distribute really means is split. So like if you order a pizza, you bring it home and then you distribute it to your family, you are splitting it up to your, to everybody. What happens here is a negative makes everything the opposite. So what this negative says is make opposite. So my problem becomes -5. And remember, we can add addition wherever we want. So I'm just going to put an addition in there. The opposite of 7. Well, that's -7. The opposite of -3. Remember, this is not really subtraction. We don't like subtraction. I could add a plus in here and make it plus the negative like we talked about last week and pretty much since the beginning of school. So the opposite of a negative is now a positive. And here we see option C does not work because I end up with negative positive. So because my 7 ends up negative, it is not a usable option here. Does anyone, or sorry, not a matching option. Does anyone have questions on why C does not match the expression that I'm trying to get to? I'm going to change colors to talk about option D. Now, please realize Khan Academy does a really good job of scrambling things. So even if you get this exact same problem with the same numbers, your answers will probably be scrambled. So in D, -5, I'm going to go ahead and rewrite D and say plus -7 plus -3. So D had said -5 minus 7 minus 3. And instead of minuses, I wrote plus negatives, right? So instead of -7, I wrote plus -7. Instead of -3, I wrote plus -3. Is anyone confused on why I wrote D the way I did? Now, on your notes, hey, please make sure that if you message me that you're going to do Khan Academy, that you're doing Khan Academy, not like talking to somebody else or like watching TV. If I was you, would draw the arrows. And it doesn't matter if you draw them above or below. Sorry, we want to draw an arrow from the negative to each value inside the parentheses. Sorry, my pen is kind of going. So then we make everything the opposite that it was. So what's the opposite of 5? -5. Sorry, everything inside of the parentheses is what's getting impacted, which here is everything. The opposite of -7 is a +7. And the opposite of -3 is +3. So Skylar, I'm going to call on you because you look like you might melt if your hand doesn't hold up your face. Does D, now that we've done what we need to do to D, does D match what we want? Sorry, try again. It was kind of glitchy to try to hear you. Sorry, Scott. Yeah, I might need to come back. I think we're having some connection issues. Drew, what do you think? Does D now match what we want?
pretty sure, yeah.
Yeah, because we wanted a -5, a +7, and a +3. So D also matches what we want. So we said A was a match, and D is now a match because my 5 turned negative, and my 7 and my 3 both turned positive. So guys, if you are not completely caught up with Khan Academy, you should be watching what I'm doing and asking questions when things don't make sense. Because that's the end of that problem. That option D, and we already said option A, which we can see on the little paint window over here. Option A is negative, positive, positive. And then D, we just said, becomes what we want. Are there any questions on that problem? We're going to do another one that looks a lot more difficult, but really isn't much more difficult. It's really the same type of problem. If you got a question, please use your Zoom hand or just talk. Like, you can just start talking, that's fine. Well, if you unmute. So guys, some of you saw problems like this, which you should be able to see on my paint window right now. And you got freaked out, right? Because it's fraction problem, it's positive and negative numbers problem. It's a lot going on. But really, if we take a moment to look at what it's asking us, we're not supposed to solve this problem. What we're supposed to do is figure out which expressions would be equivalent, right? So if we look at 8 4/5, so I'm going to date my paper so I remember when we did this. 8 4/5 is positive. Then my problem says plus parentheses 3 2/10, which actually we could reduce 2/10. You might have noticed that. Then it says minus 1 1/5. We don't like subtraction. So I'm going to do plus the negative 1 1/5. Sorry, I didn't quite leave room for an extra parentheses in there, but I should put that in its own parentheses. I lucked out and was able to sneak that in there. So this plus on the outside of the parentheses doesn't do anything. A plus on the outside says keep everything the same. So different than when the negative on the outside distributes and flips everything to the opposite that it was, the plus on the outside keeps things. So really my 8 4/5 stays 8 4/5. My 3 2/10 stays 3 2/10. And my negative 1 1/5 stays negative 1 1/5. So we have positive, positive, negative. Any questions on how I got to positive 8 4/5, positive 3 2/10, negative 1 1/5? Guys, I know some of you have questions and are just refusing to ask. I'm hoping that those of you who have your camera off are like, there's a legitimate reason, because at this point, guys, I'm not fighting it anymore. We only have a week left of this, and when you come back to school, like, if you have made poor academic choices right now, you'll have to deal with them when you come back to school. Like, it's not going to hurt. I don't even want to say it's not going to hurt anyone but yourself, but I mean, it's going to feel uncomfortable. Like, it won't necessarily be, you know, like painful, but it's going to hurt a little bit. It's going to be kind of uncomfortable. I'm trying to give plenty of time if people had questions. No questions. So now we look at our multiple choices, right? And they're kind of grayed out over here. But let's look at our multiple choice options. We're looking for positive, positive, negative. When I look at A, we have positive. We have positive, and we also have positive. So because A is positive, 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 doesn't work. I need my 1 1/5 to be negative. B, 8 4/5 is positive. 3 2/10 is positive. 1 1. Oh, B works. B is one of our options, right? And I can't click this because I kind of took a picture. But B would work because it's positive, positive, negative. It's after that that things become kind of complicated. So I'm going to jump down to E because this looks to be the most complicated one. So I'm going to write E out on my paper. Guys, if you've been struggling on this work, you should be writing down what I write down. Oh, my greens are over here. What happens to my 8 4/5? Let's go Lulu, or I can't remember who said they're going to work in Khan Academy. Stella, your hand's up.
It would become a negative because it becomes a negative because it distributes and changes.
Yeah, now the only thing inside of this parentheses is the 8 4/5, but still, the negative comes into the parentheses, says become the opposite of what you are. It was positive, it becomes negative.
Mr. Hudson, I think you wrote it wrong because on the problem it says negative.
Oh, negative. Yeah, thank you. There's another, sorry, an E. If we look over in the paint, there are 2 negatives in front of E. So my bad. This actually becomes positive. Good catch. I couldn't even look quick enough to see who made that catch. So this comes in and says, oh, you are negative, or we can look at minus the negative and say, oh, you become positive. And now we kind of let the cat out of the bag. What happens here?
That
becomes positive. And here, well, nothing really happens, right? Plus a negative stays plus a negative 1 1/5. So guys, that's the last equivalent expressions like that I was going to do. I'm going to do one with variables next was my plan. A lot of us are missing some of these, like, which are true. But do you have any questions? Sorry, and that works because we get positive, positive, negative. That one does work. Any questions remaining about that one? And actually, we need 3 answers, so we would need to keep looking for a third one. Positive, positive, negative. Oh, here. D would also work, right? Because positive, positive, negative. Even though it looks like minus, it's actually negative, right? Even though it looks like minus, we call it negative. By the way, guys, if me coming through to your end is glitchy, like it sounds weird, turn off your video and just shoot me a message that you've got slow internet. Like, that will probably fix it. If I am glitchy coming through to you, turn off your video. All right. So if this is our problem, sorry, ignore the stuff under it. I could open a new paint, but I don't really want to. It says, which equations are true? Choose all that apply. So guys, I'm going to write these out. A says negative x plus 0 plus negative x equals 0. X is whatever you want it to be. So it could be 5, it could be 10, it could be pi. It doesn't matter. excuse me, but if we have a bad guy x and another bad guy x, do they neutralize? No. This should actually be negative 2x. So this is not a true statement. This is false. This is not true. That's not equal. If we look at B, sorry, is anyone confused on why A is not true? A lot of you guys marked that it is true. B says negative x. This is A, this is B. Negative x minus negative x equals 0. So minus a negative x, well, hopefully we're all with me that minus a negative becomes plus a positive. And if we have a bad guy x plus a good guy x, does that become 0? Yes. So this does check out. A bad guy x plus a good guy x does equal 0. Questions on that one? So that I don't forget, in 5 minutes when we end class, I need Nate, Sky, and Martin to hang out real quick. I just need to chat with you guys about something really fast. Promise I will still give you a 10-minute break between classes. I just need Nate, Sky, and Martin, please. To choose another one that was a popular goof up, I'm just going to start like asking random questions. Does x plus x equal 0? No. Because like if x is 5, let's say does 5 plus 5 equal 0? No. Does a negative x plus x equal 0? Yeah. Because a bad guy x and a good guy x, they equal 0. That makes sense. All right, the last thing I want to review really quickly before we get out of here is absolute value, to talk about distance on the number line. Guys, we talked about 2 different ways to do this, but the big reminder that I wanted to make is when we do absolute value, we would like it to be the higher minus the lower, but it doesn't have to be. Remember, higher minus lower can also be flipped around, and it can be lower minus the higher. So while we would like it to be higher minus lower, it isn't necessarily going to be higher minus lower. So when we see problems, and I'm running out of time, so I'm just going to drag this over here. When we see problems like this, and it says, which of these works? Well, if 1/4 is the higher, then okay, higher minus lower, well, but that wouldn't make sense. So maybe this is lower minus higher. But either way, this is part of the distance problem. Remember that we said distance? We have this stuff written down in our notes from a previous day. Distance equals difference, which means subtract. So what that means is if, this is what's messing you guys up, if you see absolute value of like x plus y, I'm just going to use variables, or okay, so let's say this is 5 plus 7. If you see addition, what that really was is 5 minus negative. That should be a 7. Sorry, my brain is getting tripped up on itself. That's how it became plus. Oh, you can't see, guys. Somebody has to jump in and tell me when you guys can't see what I'm writing when I think you can. That or no one's watching me. So one of two things was just happening. Either we were all being way too polite, which we've already talked about before, help us out because we're trying to do a lot of things, or just no one was watching my screen to pay attention that you couldn't see. Either way, that's kind of a problem. Absolute value. We would like it to be higher minus lower, but often it isn't. So, well, not often. It just depends if Khan Academy is trying to play tricks on us. So lower minus higher is the same thing. It is still equal. We talked about previously, distance means difference. There's always subtraction. There's always subtraction. If it looks like there's not subtraction, if it looks like it's addition, what that means is your second number was actually negative. So this tells you the numbers are actually 5 and negative 7. So on a number line, we'd be looking for the number line that has negative 7, positive 5, and that distance, not positive 5, positive 7. This is where you're getting goofed up. If it looks like addition, it came from subtraction, which means the second number actually must be negative. Let's look at a couple of these and I'll get you guys out of here. So this is minus. It's either lower minus higher or higher minus lower. It doesn't matter, but because we see the minus, we know our two numbers are 1/4 and 5/4. So B wouldn't work. Our correct answer is A. Our correct answer is A. Right? Positive 5/4, positive 1/4. I'm going to go ahead and leave the answers showing. Here, baby mango tree stands 2.6 above. That's a positive 2.6. But this 7/5 is below. So that's negative. Remember, if it looks like addition, well, we don't have looks like addition. So we don't have it. Our answer is none of the above here. These have subtraction in them. So like we just said, subtraction is higher minus lower or lower minus higher. But either way, these are both positive. When one of them is negative, well, when the second one is negative, it looks like addition. Guys, I hope you made this note on your paper about if the second value is negative, that's what creates it looking like positive. I mean, we could have also written, here's the thing, we could have also written negative 7, of course, in absolute value, negative 7 minus 5. That would have been the other way to write it, and I know my absolute values are super tall there, because we could have also written, I'm going to say or, negative 7 plus negative 5. You wouldn't normally see it written like this, though. That would be kind of goofy. But that's another way that we can write it, right? Instead of subtraction, we can do plus the negative. Let's look at another. So positive 4.35, negative 2 1/5. Well, one value, negative 2 1/5, minus the other value. A is what works. Because A starts with my negative minus my positive. So this one is actually this situation, lower minus higher. Their lower number, because we can have a negative number as our lower minus a positive number as the higher, and then it will look like negative something minus positive something, but really all that's doing is lower minus higher. So if we bounce back to that problem, lower, negative 2 1/5, minus the higher, that's why A is our correct choice. Let's look at one more of these before we get out of here. Positive, positive. So I need a positive minus a positive, whichever way I write it. I don't have that. I have negative minus a positive, not what I want. And I have positive minus a negative, that's not what I want either. Are there specific questions that you think everybody would benefit from. Otherwise, we're going to wrap class up, and I just need to hang on to Nate, Sky, and Martin real quick. Oh, and Charlie, if you wouldn't mind. Nate, Sky, Martin, and Charlie. Anybody else have any questions for us? All right, cool. Well, guys, thank you very much. Actually, who can summarize? Hold on, before we leave, who can summarize the announcements from the beginning of class about homework?
Check
This
your updates.
Yeah, check updates on Schoology. What else? I think Manasi, did you raise your hand? It's on Schoology. There are 3 new practice assignments in Khan. Who can tell me what we do with the unit test that's been assigned in Khan? Nate, do you know?
We need to do everything else.
Yeah. Everything else needs done before you try the unit test. Yeah, and I'm going to give you guys time on Wednesday. Right? I'm going to give you guys time on Wednesday. Everything else needs done before you try the unit test. With that,